Okay, let's see here. No. Nope. Oh, hi. I'm just looking through some of my old stuff. First, something I said about the twins once. Here we go. The more I realize, the Kamikita Futago are kind of insane. Yeah, so just wanted to make a little correction about that. The twins, they're not insane. They're outright sadists. Seriously, almost every time I review one of their books, the final Tankobon exclusive chapters are some of the most intense Precure stories ever, and they don't even require some of the end of the world threats like in the main shows. No, instead, we get stuff like a dominatrix scarring Akira and then literally throwing salt in her wounds, or Emu entering into a textbook toxic relationship with a psychotic android. Hell, even in the previous volume of this particular series, we saw the near genocide of one of the genders of an entire race. Oh, and also, even more blood than that little flesh wound Mana once suffered. And yet, surprisingly, the chapter we're covering today, I think tops all of that just based on how cruel it gets. Though don't get me wrong, I'm not saying a little bit of mean-spiritedness is necessarily a bad thing. If anything, it makes the later triumphs of our heroines all the more satisfying. It's just that, damn, I think I'm gonna need a legit break for these longer views after this. But first things first, let's wrap up the Mahotsukai Precure manga reviews with this final chapter. The final chapter of these books open with our heroines returning to the magical world. Apparently, they were on a little family vacation. Most of this was Miai's idea, believing that they could make some wonderful memories after reading about it in a book. Yeah, girl, I wouldn't trust anything out of the For Dummies series. Actually, this was not at all so weak to the magazine the Precure manga are normally published in. Corporate pandering aside, the book did give them one good idea: make matching brooches to symbolize their unity. Yeah, obvious plot device is obvious, but still makes for a cute moment. Anyway, they made their way across Equestria. Don't worry, that will become a lot more relevant later. Scoping out all sorts of really nice drawn locations, including inside some caves, some nice fields, and some waterfalls lined with some giant testicles. Seriously, what's the story behind those things? On their second day of travels, they arrived at the village of fairies, as well as a bunch of other mythical creatures, including some canned vegetable mascots. While relaxing at a river, they noticed a giant peach flowing downstream that Miai scooped up and was going to slice up, and yeah, even Liko could pick up where this was going. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen this character in this franchise, or at least some interpretation of him from Toei in general, and oh, wait, it's neither the warrior or the Imagine, but rather Princess Kaguya? Ah, geez, the twins are mixing up their fairy tales again, aren't they? Actually, it was another baby fairy, which our heroines were almost too excited to try and adopt on the spot. Like, okay, you two, I get that your first daughter might have grown up a little too quick, but how do you know you can claim ownership on this one? For all you know, someone might have lost their peach baby while washing some clothes in the river. Well, no time to think about those meddlesome little ethics, as much like their first daughter, this fairy suddenly grew into a preteen form. Though, before she went through a sudden growth spurt, they named her Peachan based off the sound she made and the fact that she came out of a peach. Wait, they found a small creature that suddenly grew a lot bigger and they named it Peachan. Well, we shouldn't make any sort of assumptions just yet, but I am going to imagine this cute little anime girl with the voice of Frieza. They took their totally trustworthy second daughter with them on their trip. Along the way, she inquired about their matching brooches and learned how they symbolized their bonds as a family. Miai said they would make one for Peachan too, but she didn't really seem to care about that, and instead pointed them towards an apple tree that she insisted they snack on. Of course, Liko pointed out that they probably shouldn't just eat fruit from a tree in the middle of nowhere, but Peachan quickly shut her up. Yeah, I mean, when has eating a mysterious fruit ever resulted in anything bad happening to a character in a toy property? Oh, hi, Kamen Rider Gaim. Miai also tried to get an apple, but for some reason they all just suddenly disappeared. But hey, just as long as her friends were all happy, that's all that mattered, especially Peachan. Okay, screw it. I'm calling this little brat Noise-chan for the remainder of the review. Sure enough, I think those apples were on their way to becoming cider, as Kota was kind of out of it, and Liko needed a fainting couch. Don't worry, I'll only do one more MLP reference after this. Anyway, Kota in no time at all managed to get herself a Fantasia harem going. Oh, I'm not kidding. She was getting uncomfortably close to all these other fairies, centaurs, and dragons. I'm sorry I had to remind you of one of the worst Rick and Morty episodes ever, but that's just how off-putting this whole page is. Goes without saying, the kid had gone into her rebellious stage and wasn't listening to her mom when she said no polygamies. Naturally, Mirai tried to get the other parent involved, but Liko had also become a little bit more free-spirited and was totally up for her daughter learning about other species. And speaking of learning, Liko's own idea of laying loose was studying even more, which, yeah, even Noise-chan could only let out a half-assed reaction like this. Regardless, Mirai had also lost Liko. As for Mofurun, she had honestly become the most adorable feral beast ever. Like, seriously, if she makes faces like this, I think she'd be better off in this state. With their little family vacation put on an indefinite hold due to everyone catching a case of the discords, Mirai was a little down, but assured Noise-chan that things would just go back to normal sooner or later because they're a family. To which some convenient and well-drawn storm clouds seemed to disagree. Of course, Noise-chan also left her without saying much, and Mirai was now truly all alone. While it wasn't immediate, it seems that her New Year's dream had indeed come true. Fortunately, the headmaster of the magic school came in to provide her with an umbrella and a towel. Oh, and also mentioned that Noise-chan was totes evil. Yeah, apparently he and a bunch of other higher-ups knew all along about this mischievous little fairy, and how she only pretended to be a newborn to get close to some unsuspecting travelers to pull pranks on them. I don't know why they didn't try to keep better tabs on her, but hey, at least he did try to tell the Precure about her. Yeah, remember when he appeared in the first few pages of this chapter? Well, when he heard they were going to the land of fairies, he did try to tell them about Noise-chan, but they pulled a Batman on him and left before he could finish. Okay, one, our heroines are kind of rude for ditching the dude while he was clearly in the middle of a monologue, and two, why did it take this old coot this long to tell them this? I mean, it was established that the Precure arrived here on their second day of travel, so he had a full day to beat them here and warn them about Noise-chan. Alright, I'll admit, I am kind of exaggerating my frustrations, as I still really do like the story. It's just that I am kind of getting tired of these useless mentor characters who are just here to facilitate the plot. He's nowhere near as bad as the idiot deity, but I am starting to notice some similarities. Anyway, Mr. Exposition provided Mirai with a look at her friends and their admittedly heart-wrenching inner struggles. Liko, in spite of what she said, really wanted to go back to Mirai. Mofurun had completely exhausted herself, and Kota, yeah, alright, that's kind of overstepping the line there, Kamikitas. Let's just ignore that, and instead ask, how exactly are we also getting Noise-chan's evil monologue on top of all of these scenes? Does the headmaster have like a lock on her? And if he does, why didn't he show up sooner? Alright, sorry, I'll stop bringing that up. For now. It was obvious that the apples were the cause of all of this, so the headmaster's crystal ball looked up and managed to find a recipe for an antidote. Precure, a series where our teenage protagonist goes on a journey to create antidotes to get her friends off of drug-induced highs. Yeah, legit, I'm gonna keep this manga away from my niece until she gets older. Anyway, Mirai just needed to brew a potion out of a 7-colored 4-leaf clover. Is something like that more or less lucky than Fry's regular colored 7-leaf clover? Said clover could only be found in the sacred desert. Alright, I don't know how a desert can be designated as sacred, or why they decided to repeat this joke. Like, seriously, even without the Discord apples, our heroines have been really rude in this story. That said, the headmaster could also stand to do a little more than just lecture and actually help Mirai, but I don't know, maybe he has a prostate exam he has to go to or something. Thus, Mirai made her way alone to the so-called sacred desert, and unsurprisingly was having a hard time finding a clover amongst all the sand. hand. She tried to cast a spell to locate it, and all of a sudden, an oasis appeared in front of her in the middle of the desert. Yeah, obviously it was just a mirage and nothing was there except for a Walmart.
With shopping convenience at such low prices.
Obviously, the heat was getting to the poor girl, and she couldn't even cast spells as a result. Then again, maybe it had more to do with the fact that her wand was suddenly a snake. It tried to bite her, but luckily her brooch protected her, which, okay, nice symbolism and everything, but where did the snake go? Did it retreat, or did Miai's wand turn into it and then turn back after it bit the brooch, as this panel seems to suggest, or was it just another mirage?
I don't know!
Anyway, I guess her broom was also out of juice, so our heroine bravely made her way through the desert on foot for the sake of her family. And eventually, she found the Clover atop a giant cactus.
Oh, come on!
Thankfully, they didn't actually show that much, and her hands look surprisingly fine, all things considered. But yeah, I gotta give points to this story for going out of its way to show Miai's struggles to save her friends. It just really helps get the reader behind her, especially with all of these great faces of just pure determination. In fact, I kind of wish we had gotten to see a little bit more of her struggles, as by the very next page, Miai was already back in the land of fairies and had made a potion. So yeah, no explanation on how she got back, in spite of not even seeming to have the strength to use her broom by the looks of it. And in fact, this whole journey through the desert took up a grand total of 4 pages. Like, okay, I wouldn't want them to stretch this plot too far, but it does kind of feel like this was always meant to be a slightly longer story that the twins weren't afforded. I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel. Then again, I guess many of my viewers just wanted me to get to this part of the story anyway. Having ditched their brooches and fully succumbed to the effects of the apples, everyone wasn't willing to take their medicine, even though I think she did kind of get kotoha. I mean, if she tasted it, then that suggests she ingested at least a little bit of the antidote. But whatever, I guess they needed a full mouth's worth. So Miai, determined to prove Noise-chan wrong, decided to use a method that really shouldn't be used nowadays to give them their medicine, starting with Mofurun, which, okay, that's just her plushie, and oh, there's Kota. Last, of course, came Liko, complete with a montage of all their times together over the course of this manga. And yes, I'm sure this is eluding some sort of reaction out of some of you out there. You hear that silence? That's the sound of me completely soundproofing this place. I'm one step ahead of you, Yuri fans. Was that crack always there? Oh crap. Okay, my cynicism aside, this was a really nice scene and a really well laid out 2-page spread, especially if you're a Miai/Liko shipper. Honestly, could have gone without Kota because, again, daughter implications there, but at least that was off screen. With that, Miai's family was back together, and the headmaster, rather humorously I'll admit, finally decided to do something. Yeah, sure dude, now you want to contribute after everything's pretty much over. Honestly, I was kind of hoping Miai would show this dude her thorn-covered hands to point out how much of a lazy ass he's been, but oh well. Still, I guess you could say Miai decided to not press charges against Noise-chan, as she kind of understood where she was coming from. Personally, I don't think she should be forgiven for essentially brainwashing everyone just because she was a little envious, but superheroines and all that, I guess. Speaking of which, the team transformed into their Alexandrite-style forms for the first and only time in this manga, all just to create that brooch she promised her earlier in the story. Okay, little overkill breaking out the super forms just for that, but I guess they also wanted the light show. With that, the manga ended with the Precure heading home after a busy day or two, don't know how long Miai's desert journey took, and then wanting to get some food while also swearing off of apples forever. I'll just give that to Ryuk later. And them confirming that their bonds as a family had become stronger than ever. So, okay, I really liked this chapter and think it was a fantastic way to close out the Mahotsukai Precure's manga run, but, and hear me out here, I do think the Beauty and the Merman chapter from the last volume had the better story. Now, personally, I still like this one more, but I also have to admit, it didn't flow quite as well. Appropriately, I think the point where the flow dried up was when we got to the desert. While we did get some strong and entertaining scenes there, like Mirai climbing a cactus just to get the cure for her friends, or her seeing mirages and making faces like this, we also got some confusing moments like the disappearing snake and her unexplained return. Granted, those are smaller nitpicks, especially compared to the bigger issue I have with this, and ultimately why I think the Volume 1's final chapter had the better story, the villain. While I certainly wouldn't call Noise-chan a bad antagonist, in fact she was pretty damn effective, we also didn't get to see much of her compared to the Sea Witch, whom, even though she didn't appear until the climax of that story, her presence could be felt throughout it. Here though, the mischievous fairy was a little forgettable because there was just so much other stuff going on. We had the vignettes of all the cures going bad, the headmaster getting involved, Mirai going on her fetch quest in the desert. There were just so many different plot points going on that Noise-chan kind of became an afterthought. And yet, with all that said, I still really did like this chapter because it just had some really good moments. The obvious theme that they were trying to hammer in here was about family, which does suit the Mahotsukai team very well considering how much they invested into becoming a functional unit. Thus, those moments when they were apart and seeing Mirai try to get them all back together hit all the harder, even if things felt a little disjointed at times. But still, you kind of have to come into this one just for those big emotional moments ranging from the uncomfortable to the big satisfying moments. Just this whole chapter felt like the twins completely unleashed, and while I can't approve of everything, I also won't deny this was a great read, and I am glad I was able to finish out one of their strongest manga runs so far. And with that, I'm just gonna put these longer format reviews on a bit of a hiatus. Don't worry, I won't take a few months to come back, I just want to get ready for Halloween. And yes, as some of you could tell from my not-so-subtle hints, I'm planning on revisiting the Higurashi franchise in celebration of the reboot also coming out in October. While I don't think I'll be doing manga reviews like this video, I will be doing more general videos that I think will be more satisfying in the long run, starting things off with a ranking list for the original 8 story arcs of the series. So look forward to it. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I've got to do some bug catching. Cicadas aren't exactly native to Hawaii.